Hello, folks. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. My name is Roy Bensby. I'm your host. And this week on the podcast, we have Kuntal Joisher. Kuntal is a vegan climber. He's summited Everest vegan, meaning vegan clothes, vegan food. He was, though not verified, I don't think there's any body, nor governmental or Guinness or any other body that, verifies these things. But from some of the research done by different outlets, they are saying that he is the first vegan, again, with clothes, no leather, no down, all synthetic, and food wise, no animal products, no dairy, no milk, no meat, no eggs, etc., etc. So all vegan, all good. And although Kuntal will be the first to say that a vegan diet is no other than any other diet, it's even potentially better. So there's no actual reason why being on a vegan diet would hinder or not allow him to summit Everest or any other mountain or compete for that matter in any other sport just as well as anybody else. But because he is one of the few and kind of a trailblazer in that sense, there is a lot of media hype behind it. And good for him, good for him for bringing that to the forefront, for speaking about it and getting publications to take notice and then putting stories out. I think that's important for people to hear stories like that and realize that that old notion of the weak vegan that, is frail and really doesn't have muscle and can't compete in high level sports that's in the past. It's an old notion. It's an old stereotype. Nowadays, vegans are strong, healthy, good athletes that compete in the highest levels and all different types of sports. And there's a lot of documentaries, that cover that story. I really enjoyed our conversation. We talked about his journey. We talked about 2014 and 15 when two tragic events happened in Everest and the mindset that you have to come back in 2016 and still want to summit the mountain after everything that happened. I feel like mountaineering is 99% mental and 1% physical. Although I'm sure anybody that's summited will probably have a disagreement with me, but I'm just saying it's a lot of mental. You can have the best cardio, which you definitely should, and you have to do insane workouts and get in the best shape of your life. But there's just so much mental gymnastics that go into summiting a mountain like that. And I do feel like you have to have that inner drive and just be determined and strong-willed in order to achieve that task. It's no small task. And even though Everest is not necessarily the hardest mountain in the world, it's definitely an enormous achievement to climb it. And yeah, so we talked about that. We talked about his journey to, mountaineering. We talked about the unsung heroes of the mountain, the Sherpas, which without them, I don't think mountaineering in Everest or and potentially some of the other big 8,000 meter peaks would be possible. Their abilities to pitch a tent, make food, put the gear up, ladders, ropes to make sure the Western mountaineers are safe it's second to none. There's no one on the planet that can really compare with them. Their abilities are they're kind of supermen. And we actually discussed it would be very interesting to do a scientific study research to see why they are so good at elevation, but they're just absolutely amazing, and I don't think they get the recognition that they should. And again, without them, I'm assuming that only the elite of mountaineers would be able to climb Everest. I think the CEO that puts down $100,000 and maybe a year or 6 months of training before he comes to Everest, if the Sherpas weren't there, he wouldn't be there either. It would be left only for the tippity top, the very best in the game. So I'm sure everyone that enjoys mountaineering and comes to Everest and the Himalayas definitely appreciates them. But I do think they need to get more praise and more recognition worldwide. Guys, if you like the episode, like the podcast, please subscribe, rate, review. More importantly, share it with your friends and family. There's so many different episodes with so many different guests on so many different topics that I'm sure you'll find ones that you love and that your friends and family will love as well. So we really appreciate it. We're steadily growing the podcast, and we want to get it to as many people as possible. So thank you so much for listening. And without further ado, here is this week's guest, Kuntal Joisher. Enjoy the podcast.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Hey, Kuntal, how you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, man. Thanks for taking the time and coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yes, finally happy to be here after last week's mess up. So happy to be here.
Yeah, you'd be surprised, man. I don't know if maybe because I'm not sure if the program links directly to Google or whatever the reason is, but I've had a few people that kind of forgot last minute, but it always works out, so it's fine.
Yes, yes. Just for me, it's just that my calendar never really like. Even though I'm such a technology person, but calendar never works and it doesn't remind me. And then there's so much happening. There's a baby at home and she's taking all my time. And then suddenly you realize, shit, I had a podcast. And then you're like, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah, man. Baby changes the equation. Once you have a baby, yeah, time is different. The priorities become different. Everything changes.
I mean, I haven't seen like I don't see TV anyway, but I do follow up on Netflix a bit. But I haven't seen Netflix like almost feel forever. Like since the baby has come, I barely train, I barely do anything. I think my life just revolves around the baby. So, but it's a pretty fun experience. So I'm not complaining.
Yeah. So how is India now with Corona? Is it still on lockdown?
Um, I mean, I think the country is opening up quite a bit, but the cases are skyrocketing every passing day. So it's like on one end, you want to open the economy, you want people to start sort of earning money and get on with their lives, but at the same
Mhm.
time, we have what 60-70,000 cases happening every day. So it's like such a bummer, but and everyone's trying to figure out. I mean, every country is trying to figure out, and it's so new for most of us that for me as an engineer, I can sit at home and I can work from home and I don't need to step out. So my thinking is, why unnecessarily take that risk? Why go out? It's not like I'm missing out on anything, and I don't want to contribute to the problem as well. If I can sit at home and I can earn the money and I can get on with my life, I would rather do that. At least for a bit, until we have things under decent, I would not say control, but if the situation is a lot better, where cases are lesser and things are becoming better, I don't want to stress the system. So that's my sort of mindset.
Yeah, I mean that's smart. I think everyone wants 2020 to end already. 2020 has just been horrible. It's just like, all right, let's get. But I don't know what's waiting, on the other side. I don't think 2021 is magically going to be 100 times better. I think it's going to be a process, and it's going to take a little bit of time until we get some sort of a vaccine, and then until they start dispensing it. I don't know who they're going to dispense it to first and how long that's going to take, and until they have millions and millions of vaccines available for people. I mean, this thing's going to take a little bit of extra time. And now, with the fall and winter coming in a couple of months, you're going to probably see a second wave in a lot of countries, if not most of them. So we're headed to some unknown, uncharted waters.
Yep, yep, yep. And that's why my actions as an individual is that just stay put, hunker down, be patient as much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen this happen to me so many times in the mountains, not the COVID situation, but getting maybe stuck in a snowstorm, getting hit by an avalanche, and then having to sort of just be patient and having to recover from that situation, uh, maybe wait a year, maybe even more. So it's not something, I mean, it's tough. It's tough being in your home and constantly not even be able to go outdoors, because for me, I have a baby at home, I have a mother who's 70-year-old, and both of them are vulnerable. So
Yeah.
I don't want to go get COVID and then give it to them. So it's, as you rightly pointed out, it's so new for everyone. I'm just going to wait it out. And as you rightly pointed out, I'm going to wait it out until the vaccine happens. And whenever I get it, again, the mountains are not running away anywhere, neither is my life running away anywhere. This break is also giving me time to spend with my family and with my baby. So I'm not complaining at all. As someone who's privileged, someone who has a roof on his head, food on the table, and clothing to wear, this is something that I'm perfectly fine waiting out.
Yeah, it's a good outlook. I mean, is I don't know if mountains are, I guess open isn't the right word, but are there treks being done in the mountains right now, or everything's completely shut down?
I think if you are a, like for example, in India we have the Himalaya. So if you are someone who's possibly a local in the Himalaya, like you are living maybe in a Himalayan state and maybe you have access to the Himalaya, uh, I think as a local possibly you can go hike, go into the mountains, no one's really stopping you. So that is definitely happening. Mountains near my home, uh, I think they are, it's sort of like really confusing, because you really, they are all 2 3 hours away from my home, so you need some transportation. All the public transportation is shut down, so you have to have your own vehicle.
Yeah.
And then the mountains are always, at the start of the mountains there are always mountain communities, so these are small villages. And then us going from cities into the communities, and possibly if we are asymptomatic and give them the infection, I'm like, okay, those guys don't have access to any medical facilities. They are far away from there. And if something goes wrong in their communities, it would be a disaster. So yes, treks are open, and I have seen some pictures of people going and trekking, but I'm not I'm not very enthusiastic about it. I'm not very happy about it. So I'm going to sit tight and I'm going to wait until the winters, and see how things go, and then take a call. But for now, I'm not trekking. I'm happy being indoors and training indoors.
Yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about what you were doing before you mountaineer. How did this passion come about? What was that process?
As I mentioned earlier, that I am an engineer. I'm a software engineer, and I think all my life I have always wanted to be an engineer. This was back in my 8th grade when I discovered my love for technology. When computers were size of like my entire table, and we
Yeah.
had 512 MB floppy drives. So I think we have come a long way from there. But uh, my passion started out with technology, and then I went and did my engineering, did my masters in the United States. I lived in Los Angeles for about 4 years, and I think it's in Los Angeles where I sort of caught this idea about fitness. I still remember that day. I was sitting in my cubicle, and then my boss walked in. I was 25 back then, and my boss was 55. But my boss was this guy who was a crazy cyclist. So he had his road bike on his shoulders, and he was walking in with his flat, like abs and like really toned body. And I'm like, this guy is 55 and I am 25, and I am like obese, and he's like in the best shape of his life.
Yeah.
And I got inspired. I told him, hey, I really want to buy a cycle today. And we right away got down. We bought a cycle. For the next 2 years, I cycled like crazy. Like that, it became a part of my body until a bad accident happened. And since then, I've never cycled again. Maybe I should go back and cycle again. Um, but yeah, I think that was like initial sort of exposure to fitness. But I came back to Mumbai to take care of my parents. My father was a dementia patient, so I wanted to be his primary caregiver. So I came back to Mumbai, And then I got married and life happened, and just I got busy, and uh, it was a chance trip into the mountains. Believe me, I never. I'm someone coming from a community where people, if they have to climb one floor, they would take an elevator. So, in terms of genetics, they were totally stacked against me.
Yeah.
There was no way I was going to become a mountaineer. And it was just a chance trip. We went into the mountains on a vacation. We were tourists, and on the last day we ended up hiking, and that too we didn't plan for a hike. It was just something that happened by chance. And I remember that moment when I was standing on the top of that small peak. It was an 11,000 feet peak. It took about 4 hours for us to hike to the top, and that moment changed my life. It was so quiet, so peaceful on that top that I could literally hear my own heartbeat, like doop, doop. For a moment, I was so freaking scared that I thought my wife could actually hear my heartbeat. I mean, I was like, just my heart was blowing out. Like it was an insane experience, and and I truly felt alive, and I truly felt some deep happiness that day. And I think it was at I think feelings are temporary, so of course the feeling would have gone away very quickly. And uh, eh, but what was important was that state of mind where I was able to focus on the present, and I was able to live in the present, and I was able to enjoy in the present. And I really appreciated that state of mind that I was able to achieve without the use of alcohol or drugs. And I really thought that that was amazing, and I wanted to feel like that for the rest of my life. And I thought that I'm so passionate about technology. Maybe when I go and build something, I will feel like this. Now that I've felt like this, unfortunately, technology never gave me this kind of satisfaction or this kind of state of mind. And I decided to venture back into the mountains again on a very short weekend trip. And the moment I did that, I achieved the same state of mind. And I kept going back into the mountains over and over and over again. And every time I was into the mountains, this is exactly how I felt. And even till date, it has been 10 years, and people kept telling me, you will get bored, you will grow out of it, but nothing has changed. Even the smallest 1 hour trip into the outdoors or the mountains makes me feel alive. And I'm glad that I took this risk and went on this journey. And Everest was just something that happened along the way. Anyone who's into the world of mountains will at some point want to see Everest or think about Everest. It's not like I wanted to climb Everest or anything. For me, it was just more about, hey, I want to see the tallest mountain of the world. I want to see the top of the world. I want to go on
It's so
that journey.
iconic.
Sorry.
It's just so iconic.
It is so iconic. And all these stories about Sherpa Tenzing and Sir Edmund Hillary and climbing
Yeah.
Hillary Step and being the first humans, it always fascinated me even as a teenager. So I was like, let's do it, man. And I went to Everest Base Camp, and I remember that first sunset that I saw on Everest. Uh, it was it was absolutely magical. Everest is surrounded by gigantic peaks, by Nuptse, by Lhotse, by Lola on one side, and then there's tons of peaks around in the range. But when the sunset happens, every peak is like black, gray, blue in color, and Everest is like in the middle, burning golden in color. It's like completely stands out from every other peak. And when I saw Everest that way, for me, that evening of October 2010, I was like, this is it. This is my dream. This is what I'm going to do for at least next few years. And I promised myself standing at that point that I will climb Everest, and I will stand on top of the world someday. So that's where how sort of the journey kickstarted, and journey, like how I like like this guy who was a software engineer, 110 kilos, super unhealthy, and all was a vegan. And so much, so many self doubts, so much going on in my mind, but took the first step and went on the journey. And yeah, that's all how it started.
Is it daunting, like standing there looking at this massive piece of rock and saying to yourself, I'm gonna get to the top? That must be just convincing yourself must be at least half the work.
The first time I looked at the top of Everest from really far, the first time you actually see Everest is from your walk from Jorsale to Namche Bazaar. And through the trees there is like a small triangle, in which if the weather is clear you can see like the top of Everest. When I saw Everest for the first time, I was like, man, this is almost as good as reaching the moon. If I'm not going to ever reach the moon, I'm never going to reach Everest. It almost seemed impossible. But I know that so many people have climbed Everest, and so it was that was sort of a factor that said, okay, look, this this person was just like me, but they went on a journey where they worked hard, where they trained, where they built experience, and this was a journey they went on, and they were able to then go and reach the top of Everest. And I can also do that. And that's what sort of I went on the journey. It was not like, hey, I'm sitting on a couch, hey, I want to climb Everest, I have the money, let's go climb Everest. And that is definitely an approach, and a lot of people do that, but I did not want to do that. I wanted to use this as a journey, as more of a self exploratory, more of a self betterment journey. So that's what I did.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as cardio, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could do all the best training, the best cardio, you can run, you can prepare, you can do everything. But at the end of the day, you get to a certain point where there's just very little oxygen, and it's just down to sheer determination, willpower, the strength you have in your mind, and because your body and cardio, I feel like it just goes out the window at a certain point, right?
um in part that is true, and in part, um here's how I'm going to put it across.
Hmm.
I think the cardio that you are going to do, and it is going to be tons and tons of cardio. Like, for I think the amount of cardio I've done in 10 years is something, I have spent countless hours doing cardio. And of course, I've also done other kinds of training. But that cardio also is the foundation of all the training. And on top of that foundation i- is what you're going to build your skyscraper. Uh, your cardio combined with learning all the skills to become a reliable and a safe mountaineer. I think that's what the foundation to any mountaineering journey is. On top of that, you are going to build a lot of experience by climbing in wide variety of situations, wide variety of mountains with wide variety of people. And and that's going to help. All the combination is going to help you eventually build that mental fitness. But as you rightly pointed out, when you are at 8800 meters and there is literally no oxygen out there, and yes, you are using supplementary oxygen, but believe me, that really does not help at that altitude as much as a lot of people will make you believe that it does help. I actually did not think that it helped at all. It almost is like a placebo at that point. uh, you really are you are digging down in like the deepest reserves in your mind, and you are falling back on all of those, and it's that those last bits, I think. uh, what differentiates people who actually make it out alive and in good shape is that they have those reserves in a lot. uh, there's a lot of reserves, and people who end up dying, they have actually used up those reserves quite a bit, and then they simply do not have anything more to give, and they end up just sitting there, sleeping there, and getting a cardiac arrest and dying. Of course, there's a lot of physical things also going on in your body, but but we we hardly have any idea what mind is capable of, or what mind can do with the body, or what mind can instruct the body and then body can do it. And a lot of this definitely comes to fore when you are higher up the mountain.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit if we can. Excuse me. In 2014, you were there when the avalanche happened, and I believe it was 17 Sherpas that died. And then the following year, 2015, you were part of another massive avalanche. I think, but then I think this was an earthquake that happened in the region.
Right.
And so, two things. One, if you could tell us about those stories individually, and then after that, I have a follow up question.
Sure. So 2014 was the first time I was like climbing Everest. So I had just found a sponsorship, and I had reached the base camp and things were going great. I had really trained well for the last 3.5 years. Um my expedition leader was really like very confident in my skills. Things went smoothly for the first 8-9 days while we were at the base camp, and then on April 18th, early morning, we heard the news of an ice avalanche happening in the Khumbu icefall areas, and like it instantly killed about 16 to 17 Sherpa guides. And my initial reaction was, yeah, people die on the mountain. What the heck? I'm going to go climbing. And it was sort of a reaction of someone who was just a self-absorbed, selfish mountaineer. And mountaineers are selfish people, and I'm still till date a selfish person. And I have no sort of qualms in saying that, and I will explain later on why I'm saying that. But um, at that point, I like sort of thought, why should the climbing stop? Like there was a lot of talk about like let's stop the climbing and this and that. But I think what changed my mind was when my Sherpa team, they had escaped the accident by about 10 minutes, and they were inside my dining tent, and they were talking to us. And our lead Sherpa guide, a 27-year-old guy with 11 summits of Everest, one of the youngest sirdars in the Everest circuit with so much experience. I knew him as this, like dashing Sherpa with so much confidence, like he could literally run up Everest, that kind of a guy. And he was profusely crying, like he was crying like a baby. And all he could think of was what would have happened if, like, he had seen death up close in that ice avalanche. They were like really close to dying, and to survive that and come out of it, but also see all his brothers and his friends and uncles die in that accident, I think had shook him up. And he said, if I had died, who would have taken care of my father, my parents, my wife, my kids? And his assessment was that the mountain is still unsafe, and he really did not see any merit in going back up that route and climbing that mountain through the route. And finding a different route that year was simply not possible. Kumbu icefall route has been something that was found and has been same for 20 years. You can't suddenly in the middle of the season say I'm going to find a new route and install ladders and make it as safe as it has been for the last 20 years. Doesn't work that way. And that's when sort of the gravity of the situation hit me, and I realized that, man, I'm this is beyond this is stupidity on my part to want to go and climb the mountain when someone who's climbed the mountain 11 times is saying no. And and I think that was also a point where I grew as a mountaineer and also grew as a human being, where I started also getting in touch with the human side of things, and rather than just be self-absorbed by my climbs. uh, so I said, okay, I can wait one inconsequential year and I'll come back and climb in 2015. What the heck, it's no problem. So went back, came back in 2015. This year things went a little better. We made a little more progress. I was able to go higher up the mountain, understand how climbing on Everest would happen. By then, I had already climbed an 8,000-meter mountain in Mount Manaslu, which is the eighth highest mountain in the world. So I had fair bit of experience. I had fair bit of understanding of what to expect. And then the earthquake hit Nepal on April 25th, and I still remember that moment very distinctly. We were in the dining tent. We had all run out. We were standing on the glacier. I remember every team, like I could see in all directions. All everyone was outside the tent, and everyone was like maybe chit chatting, talking to each other, a little tentative. And the earthquake stopped, and then we hear this loud boom, almost like a bomb blast that happened somewhere. And we right away knew that an avalanche was coming our way, except we had no idea which direction it was coming from, because there had a low fog had set in at the base camp. Not a fog, but like a sort of a cloud cover had set in at the base camp. And the voice of the boom was coming from Everest side, which is on the east. So we were all standing and looking towards the east. Then I saw these people running towards east, running towards Everest, and I'm like, are these people mad? Why would someone run towards the danger? And then everyone is running towards the east, and then that's when I realized that actually the danger is behind us. So I turned around and still remember gigantic avalanche in front of us, like from left of the sky to the right of the sky. The entire sky was filled up with snow and ice. It was almost like a snow and ice tsunami coming towards us, except the tsunami waves were not 11, 12 meters, but they were the size of the entire sky. So that is what was facing us. And my mind just blanked out completely. And like sort of in that moment, I said all my player prayers, and I was like, this is it. It's not as if I it's not as if I think that I'm going to die. I am very certain I'm going to die in this moment. So we hid behind a tent. The avalanche hit. It hit us hard, and luckily, I mean, I was expecting that I would be buried under maybe what maybe 1 meter of snow, and that would become concrete in no time, and I would like just die out of not being able to breathe. But 10 seconds later, like my body had about couple of inches of snow, and all that was happening was I was struggling to breathe. And I realized that I'm going to make it out alive out of this. Uh, but that struggle for breathing was like really. I mean, it was real. Initially, I thought it was just panic, but then I would try sucking in air, but nothing was coming in. This guy next to me, a German mountaineer, Jost Kabush, Jost became really, he has been doing some crazy climbs. Last year, he was on Everest, climbing Everest in winter through some of the toughest, through one of the toughest routes. Um, but like he opened his jacket and he said, Kuntal, you can come inside my jacket and breathe. Inside his jacket, there would still be ambient pockets of air. So he had that presence of mind. He was himself breathing inside his jacket. And so even I was going inside his jacket and breathing. Uh, I think it took about 2 minutes for the avalanche to pass over us. It was mostly the after portion of the avalanche. So we were really lucky that we didn't end up like getting hit by it like really hard. But I think 21 people died at the base camp. These were all trauma injuries because they were closer to the after portion of the avalanche and they just got flung like half a kilometer inside the snowfield.
Wow.
They died really badly, and people like about 100 injured with injuries where they had gotten hit by rocks and all sorts of things on their faces and their arms and their legs. And uh, we had a satellite phone, so we were able to make a call to Kathmandu to sort of report the avalanche, report the earthquake, see what was going on in Kathmandu. And we quickly realized that what we had faced was nothing. Kathmandu had started reporting some 10,000 people dead, mass scale destruction of property where like 500,000 people were displaced from their homes. This time I knew this was not an Everest tragedy. This was a proper tragedy of humanity. It was a humanitarian tragedy of unprecedented levels essentially. And a- as someone who had been following Everest scene for so long and been part of the scene, I knew that if we continue climbing and something goes wrong on the mountain, then entire world's focus becomes Everest. No one will really care about Nepal or what is happening in Nepal. And truly speaking, the focus of the world had to be Nepal and rebuilding of Nepal. And it would be almost like suicide to climb Everest in that time, because aftershocks were continuing to happen, avalanches, small avalanches were continuing to happen higher up the mountain. Why would you even go and try to climb Everest in that kind of a situation? So me and my Sherpa leader, both of us came to a conclusion that we should cancel our expedition and we should turn around. It took a little bit of convincing for the team because some of them were desperate, and so we were able to convince everyone cancel our expedition. Similarly, everyone at the base camp canceled their expeditions. I think that year no climbing happened anywhere in the Nepal Himalaya, Indian Himalaya, in Tibet. in the spring season at least, no climbing happened. Everyone turned around, everyone went home. It didn't make any sense to go climbing. So yeah, those were the sort of 2 years that my first two attempts at climbing Everest.
I mean, that's kind of insane if you think about it. Your first two are just some horrific incidents that happen. And I mean, at no point do you say to yourself, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. I mean, look what's happened consecutively year after year. Maybe I'm not supposed to climb Everest. Does that creep into your mind at some point?
I think it didn't creep in my mind, but it creeped in mind of a lot of my friends and a lot of my family members and a lot of relatives. Like, people were saying it's not for you. Stop climbing Everest. Everest is giving you some indication,
Yeah.
and maybe you just don't have what it takes to climb this mountain. Because some of them didn't understand what was happening on the mountain. They didn't understand that these things were beyond my control. They were like, you spent what, $50,000 and you are back. You spend $50,000 again and you are back. Like, what are you doing with your life? You know, what's happening? And then they're not looking at internals of what happened on the mountain or those kind of things. My wife and my mother were worried because they had seen, from 2015, a video went viral on the internet that Yost had shot, and I prominently featured in that video. And they had seen that happen. They had seen what had happened in that avalanche, so they were really worried that what would happen if I died on the mountain. And rightly so. They would be worried about me. um, but to me, I think the way I was thinking is, I have all the momentum on my side. I have been training so hard, and this is the biggest dream of my life. I simply cannot give up. And considering that I came out of a near death experience, uh, I think every moment from that point onwards, I consider it as a bonus in my life, because I had already said my prayers and I was ready to die back then. So to come out alive of that, I think it was almost a rebirth sort of thing for me. And I was like, I'm not wasting any time, any opportunities. And so if I can manage the funds, I am definitely going to train hard, and I'm going to keep 2016 as a target. And I think there's no point listening to other people, or there's no point letting negative thoughts creep into your mind. And I'm not saying that they didn't, but I have sort of trained myself in so many years in such a way that I think once those thoughts sort of come in, I just process them, and I just like, I'm no. Yes, there is a slight chance I could die on the mountain, or something could go wrong, or maybe I should not go. But no, the the feeling to go climb Everest is so overpowering, or was so overpowering over every single aspect of my life, that nothing made a dent in my sort of going to wanting to go back and climb that mountain. It had almost become like an obsession. I think it was beyond obsession at that point. And I remember in 2016 when I went back, I don't think there were many people at the base camp who were coming back for the third time. I think there were what, like about 10 people like me who had come back for the third time. Um, so yeah, yes, negative thoughts do come sometimes, but I just have a way of processing them and not sort of like, getting carried away by them.
Yeah, I always say, there's so many ways that people die, from lightning strikes to falling in the tub to getting hit by a car to accidents to just, there's just so many ways, right? And you could literally die any moment, right? But at least if you're doing what you love, there's a fulfillment, there's some sort of a reason to be. And I just feel like I obviously it is dangerous, and but there are risks. There are definitely real risks, especially in these type of locations. But man, I don't think if it's tough because this is one of those things we'll never be able to answer. But I think if you take back all the people that have died in the mountains and ask them, like, would you change your life? I think the majority of them would say no. I think the majority of them would say that at least they died doing what they loved. But that's my 2 cents. So in 2016, when you summited, were you were vegan then, correct?
Indeed, I was a dietary vegan. And by when I say dietary vegan, I mean that all the food that I was eating off the mountain and on the mountain was vegan food, and I have been a vegan for the last 18 years. So in that sense, I have been a vegan for a very long time. Uh, and saying dietary vegan specifically because veganism is not just about the
Correct.
food that
Yeah.
we eat. It is about every single choice that we make, including the gear we wear, including like the toothpaste I use, including I mean everything, every single aspect, at least practically as much as possible.
Yeah.
We are trying to minimize animal cruelty. So the gear that I was using in 2016, at least a couple of pieces of that gear, especially the suit that I was wearing on the summit of Everest. There's a one-piece suit that is a very critical piece of gear, and then there are your mittens that also save your fingers and your from cold and frostbite. Uh, both of these pieces consisted of down feathers and leather. So these were the two things that were non-vegan items in my 2016 ascent of Everest.
I see. So, but in 2016, were you technically the first vegan to summit Everest, or is it, or you don't know?
So the first vegan question is a very tricky question because first of all, no government or no authority is actually keeping track of what people are eating on the mountain,
Yeah.
and are really keeping track of records around hey, this is the first vegan who climbed Everest. And most people sort of think of veganism as a diet, whereas I don't consider veganism as a diet. So they are thinking, oh, you climbed Everest without eating meat, and without eating eggs, and that sort of thing. So it's really tricky to sort of figure out who's the first vegan in the world to climb Everest, or whether I am the first vegan in the world to climb Everest. Uh, what I know is that there's a German magazine called Das Vegan. They put me on the cover of their magazine as the first vegan to climb Everest. And there have been a couple of claims before me of people who have climbed Everest as claiming as a vegan. And I think the magazine writer, because it was the feature and the cover story, and this is a pretty big magazine with a pretty big reach, they actually investigated every single claim. And according to them, I had the strongest claim. I don't know what they were basing their sort of claim on, but my assumption is that a vegan is someone who has been a vegan possibly for a while, so that they have trained and they have built their fitness on a vegan diet, on a vegan lifestyle, that they are eating vegan food off the mountain and on the mountain as well, uh, and that they have made the best effort possible to ensure that they are eating vegan food all the time. Uh, a lot of people just assume that certain foods are vegan, and I know of a lot of vegan mountaineers who just go and order a certain thing and expect that that's going to be vegan, and they eat it, and they never actually cross check it or double check it or talk to the chef and do their due diligence. uh, Whereas I had spent almost 6 7 years training the chefs, ensuring that everything that I was being fed on the mountain and even while on the trail was vegan. I had ensured all of that was taken care of. I had ensured all my food was fine tuned all the way to the top, and I had also made a serious sort of effort at finding vegan gear for everything. Like I was able to replace practically every single non-vegan item that is out there with a vegan alternative except the two pieces. So I I don't know. I don't even want to make a claim that I'm the first vegan in the world to climb Everest, but I think that's what sort of I got for a sense from the German magazine that put me on the cover. But coming to your point, I don't even really think I care whether I'm the first vegan in the world to climb Everest. To me, it was just important to climb Everest as a vegan to demonstrate to everyone that it can be done. Because when in 2010 I made Everest as my dream, I could hardly find anything around veganism and mountaineering. So I wanted to go out and I wanted to prove the world that vegan diet works, vegan gear works, and vegan lifestyle works. And if I can climb Everest, which is, I would not say it's the toughest mountain in the world or something, it is definitely the tallest mountain in the world. And it's a pretty committed and a very difficult feat to achieve. And if I could do that as a vegan, then I could sort of tell people that, hey, look, vegan diet works, vegan gear works. Like nothing happened to me. I climbed it really, really well. Uh, the first vegan in the world is good in a way because it gives me publicity and it allows me to talk about veganism. That's all I really care about when it comes to first vegan in the world. Otherwise, I could care less. Like
Yeah.
climbing Everest was the biggest dream of my life, and climbing Everest as a vegan was the biggest dream of my life. I achieved that. That is what really matters to me.
So what do I mean? I guess it's not. That's the thing. I feel like being vegan and climbing a mountain shouldn't even be a thing, right? It's just probably the difficulties of attaining some of the food that is necessary for you to climb. It's probably not as prevalent there because most people just eat whatever is there. But being vegan it's just like anything else. It's just like a person that eats quote unquote a regular diet. There's no, there's a few years back. I remember I saw an article. I think it was the Washington Post, and it said woman trying to prove vegans can do anything among four dead on Mount Everest. Which it's kind of like the media trying to dunk on vegans. And I think it's horrific to try to make fun of someone that died. That's kind of cruel. But on the other hand, now there's this forever there was this narrative that vegans are weak and that they're frail and they can't do certain things. But now you have bodybuilders, you have NFL players, NBA players, UFC fighters, mountaineers. I mean, it's in every aspect, and some of these guys are even performing better than their peers. So I when I say vegans is normal, it's just a normal thing. It's almost shouldn't even be a thing. It's just another diet. That's all it is.
Completely agree with you, and that is what I would like to see happen. Unfortunately, that's not how it's happening. In 2010, when I sort of even just shared the idea that I will be climbing Everest as a vegan, there was this whole bunch of pushback that, hey, how are you going to build stamina? Hey, how are you going to build endurance? How are you going to stay warm on the mountain without eating cheese or without eating meat or without wearing down feathers, without wearing leather?
Hmm.
And I'm like, whoa, why? What's the problem? And they're like, look, everyone around you. Like, for example, in India, the five top mountaineering institutes where you can go and learn mountaineering, uh, whenever a student goes to one of these institutes, they are actually forced to eat, not forced, but they're recommended to eat meat and eggs. So you can imagine how prevalent the notion that mountaineering requires animal products is. So to me, it just sort of meant that I have to, like, no chip on the shoulder or anything, but I wanted to prove all of these guys wrong. I wanted to, or more than I want, not proving them wrong, but I wanted to prove that if a guy like me with genetics completely stacked against him can train, can work hard, can build the right experience, and can go climb Everest on a vegan diet, look, there's no problem there. Okay, vegan diet is just a diet. It's just a lifestyle, and if you plan it well and if you do it well, there is no problem. At the end of the day, when people say that you have to eat meat, I think what they really mean is you have to eat protein. When they say you have to eat cheese, they really mean you need to eat healthy fats or you need to eat fats. And everyone in this world knows that you get energy from carbs, and vegan world is full of carbs. So it's just concept of eating a very well balanced and a very well planned vegan diet comprising of carbs, proteins and fats and proper micronutrients, which you can always get from supplementing or even from the food. So it, to me, it was like, hey, these all people think that this is a problem. All I need to do is I need to go and climb it and make it a little more normal. And this will only happen once many more people start going and climbing mountains as a vegan, and demonstrating that, hey, this is normal, like how it's happening with other sports. There are still very few mountaineers in the high altitude world who are on a vegan diet. But of course the number is growing, and I just hope that it will continue growing as we go in the future.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is your diet? What do you eat when you're in the mountains? Just a
See,
rough idea.
in the mountains, it's at the end of the day, it's all about calories. Once you are higher up the mountain, once you are even at base camp, which is at about 18,500 feet, your calorie requirements are out of the roof. Just at rest, your maintenance calorie requirements would easily be about 3,500 to 4,000 calories. So you really just need to eat a lot of food. And some I mean, people also argue that vegan food is less calorie dense, and so you have to eat a lot more. But a lot of these people have no idea about the vegan foods. That's why they are saying, they're like, hey, you know what, if you eat a big block of cheese, or if you eat, this meat, and then you'll get a lot of calories. And I'm like, sure, you can also find equivalent alternatives, or other amazing things in the vegan world that you can eat and get calories from that. So I have never had a problem ever in my last 10 years of mountaineering to find vegan food, first of all, and to find enough vegan food and find enough calories from the food. That has been the least of my concerns. Vegan food can be as unhealthy as non-vegan food, and people just don't know that. So you can go and you can find things like Oreo cookies, and there's a whole bunch of stuff like cashews and almonds, and a whole bunch of calorie dense snacks that you could really just eat on the mountain, and make up your calorie requirements. I'm not saying that that is what you would only eat,
Yeah.
but if you're really worried about your calorie requirements, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can actually eat. um, so on the mountain, at the base camp, and at one of the higher camps where there's a proper kitchen, I tend to eat a very well balanced diet. Again, maybe about 40% or maybe 50% from carbs, then about 25% from protein, and maybe 25% from fats. So maybe sometimes I'll increase the fat intake, and maybe even the protein intake. So maybe it will be 40, 30, 30, something like that. And mixture of foods, mixture of whole grains, uh, rice, um, whole bunch of vegetables that are easily available, of course. Potatoes are really famous in the Khumbu Valley, and potatoes are also great calories, great carbs. So potatoes make a big part of my diet, especially French fries make a big part of my diet when I'm on the mountain. N- I will not touch French fries when I'm training at sea level. Like, in last 4 months, I have not eaten a single piece of deep fried snack,
Really?
and so I will never do that. But once I'm on the mountain, I will end up eating a lot of deep fried food. Um, so yeah, but again, as I said, like for example, typically a lunch plate would consist of 4 or 5 pieces of Indian bread, then a big bowl of curry, a big bowl of lentils, and then on the side a big bowl of vegetables. So this could be, a typical lunch that I would eat. Um, and snack could be a protein bar that I have taken from here, or a meal bar that I have taken from here, or a meal replacement powder that I have taken from here. So that could be a typical snack, or a lot of dried fruits, a lot of dried nuts, uh, those kind of things. Dinner could be something like a spaghetti with a lot of vegetables, some fake meat on the top. So again, making just really balanced meals throughout the day, and making them the easiest way is to increase the portion sizes, and that way you just get more calories in your body. And I think one thing that most mountaineers that I've seen struggle with is that they simply are not able to eat a lot of food on the mountain, because as you go higher up the mountain, your body is starting to conserve oxygen for the brain and the heart, and consequently your digestive system has lesser access to oxygen, and the digestion is sluggish. which means your brain is not getting a signal that you really want to eat more. But I sort of make it a habit to overeat 1 or 2 months before the expedition begins. So even when I'm at sea level, I'm eating 4,000 calories in a day, even though I don't really need them.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I'm in a habit of overeating. And the second technique that I use is that I eat very fast. Before people even look at their plate, my meal is finished. And so I can then eat a second portion that big. And so those are the sort of techniques that I have used on the mountain to just load myself with calories. But this only works at the base camp. So most climbers spend a lot of time at the base camp. So I just ensure that when I'm at the base camp, I'm just like eating a lot of calories. And then as we start going higher up, I'm simply not able to eat that many calories. But most other climbers that I see, they are just eating way less calories than I am. Uh, so that's something that I've noted, and those are the two tips that I would like to sort of give any mountaineers listening into this: eat fast and train for overeating before you come on the mountain.
Yeah. You can be a competitive eater at the end of it. Get those like 27 hot dogs, like, tuck, 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 just eat
I
it
mean,
fast.
I mean, I know of a guy who lost 40 pounds on the mountain. You could literally see bones of his ribs popping out.
Yeah,
That has never happened to me ever on a single climb. On
really.
the contrary, if I go on a climb, then I will come back to my original weight. So let's say if 1 month before the climb, when I start my overeating, I was 80 kilos, and then at the end of overeating, I'm about 84 kilos. Then when I come back home, I'm just 80 kilos. So I'm back to my original weight. I'm never like those people who lose like 40, 50 pounds on the mountain. And there are so many of them. They just
Yeah,
don't have any energy when it comes to the final days, and they're
that's what they
struggling.
usually look like. At the end, like you'll always see the guys, they always look dilapidated, like 20 pounds less, like they're cutting weight for like a MMA fight. They just look like, the hollow in the eyes.
It's crazy, and that has never happened to me though.
That's good. When mountaineers, and I've climbed like a few small mountains, 14ers and stuff, and always when you talk to people, it's people who love nature, and it's almost by default, like you go into the mountains because you love them, so naturally you love the environment and you want to preserve it. But do you think a lot of them do not make the connection between veganism and environmentalism?
I don't think I haven't met a single person who has made the connection. I'm saying on the mountains. Of course, outside of mountains, I've met so many who have made the connection. But on the mountains, no. I think they will do everything. They will like segregate their waste, and they will not use straws, and then they will do whole like they'll say I'm not going to use plastic, and then I go and tell them, but here's a choice that you can make where you will make a far bigger and a far more tangible impact right away, and they're just not willing to listen to it. And it's shocking. It's shocking. like like once you go vegan, I think every single meal you are going to make a big difference. Of course, as a vegan also, you could be eating an avocado that is growing in Peru, and then you are getting that avocado in India. That's not a smart thing to do. So you also have to be smart as a vegan, try and eat more local foods, and do those kind of things. But again, at least start with a plant-based diet, and that is going to make a huge impact already. I am trying hard. I'm trying to sort of make people aware, and Everest has seen some terrible effects of global warming. uh, I remember going to Everest in 2010 for the first time and seeing the entire glacier outside of Khumbu icefall, and significant portions of that glacier has disappeared today, and it's all rocky today, rocky areas where they are now setting up campsites. And people are seeing this across the board in the Himalaya everywhere. And I keep telling them, you love Everest so much, you should be able to make this connection that it's happening because of global warming, it's happening because of climate change. Yes, there's trash on Everest, and if we put lesser trash on Everest locally, it will make a difference. But do you think this is a local phenomenon that is causing so much glaciers to recede? It has to be a global phenomenon that is causing so much receding of the glaciers to happen. But I don't think most people are still making a connection.
I
No,
think
they're not.
people I think people believe in what they see, right? When they see videos or pictures of tortoise swimming in the Galapagos, and there's like plastic thing around his
Right, right,
around his face or around his body. They're like, oh, that's horrible. Or they see plastic straws in some sort of gyre up out in the Pacific. That's horrible. But when they see tangible things, when they see cars spewing out carbon, that's horrible. But when it's not as visible, when it's like you have to make the connection in your head and you have to listen to the science, and people are telling you that the carbon emissions and methane emissions coming from the meat industry is worse than the whole traffic, from cars to
right,
planes to
right.
boats to everything together, then it's a little harder for people to make that connection. It's not a tangible thing. It's not right in front of them, and it's not a visible thing like a cars or like the plastic pollution. And it's just very comfortable for them to ignore that. On top of that, they would have to change their lifestyle, their diets. They
Right,
just they just don't want to do that.
right, right. Right, but I think it's changing, as a
It is.
lot of
It is.
top climbers, for example Alex Honnold, who's
Yeah.
one of the, like once in a century rock climber,
Yeah.
and he's now
Superstar.
so passionate about environmentalism and plant based eating and talking about it constantly. And so many of them are now doing it, so many of them are now raising awareness, and I think this is what is required, where some of these top climbers start raising awareness and being those role models, and hopefully, with a culture shift and with a culture change, people will be more open to listening to these concepts and bringing them about in their life. So yeah, I'm also going to constantly talk about it, constantly raise awareness about it, and I constantly keep doing that. So that's the activism that I'm going to do.
That's awesome, man. Let's just touch on the Sherpas, because we talked you talked about them a little bit earlier, but I feel like they're the unsung heroes of the mountains. I mean, what they do, their achievements there on the mountain are just unbelievable. When you look at like some of the top climbers in the world, whoever they are, and the achievements they've done, they're usually, you know, it's nothing compared to what these Sherpas are doing on a yearly basis. Some of them have, I don't know how many, but it's tens of summits, right? And they're carrying so much of the other people's equipment, and they're carrying things to make it easier for the climbers, to make it safer for them. But I don't feel like they get as much attention as and the glory of some of the Western climbers that come in and summit.
Um, I have now been in Nepal, climbing in Nepal for 10 years with Sherpa people, with Sherpa guides, with the Sherpa community. Believe me, i- even the above average Sherpa is far, far, far superior to some of the best climbers in the world. And and no disrespect to some of the best climbers in the world, those Sherpas don't even have the kind of training that those best climbers in the world have, or the kind of access to tools, money, and lifestyle. Those Sherpas have nothing. In spite of all of that, they are far, far superior athletes. I mean, okay, I'll give you an example. I have this really dear friend. His name is Mingma Temba Sherpa. He's my personal Sherpa, Mingma Tenzi Sherpa's elder brother. And if you see Mingma Temba Sherpa walking on the road, you'd feel he's just an obese guy. Okay, he's literally an obese guy. Okay, when he comes on the mountain, however tough the terrain is, however steep the terrain is, however technical the terrain is, and however new the terrain is, he just flies. He flies and he disappears before, like, if I put my head down and I put my head up, in that much time he's already disappeared.
Jesus.
And he's carrying far more load than I can even carry in the wildest dreams of my life. Like, I know of Sherpas who have gone from camp 2 to camp 4 while carrying 85 kgs on their back 85 kgs of oxygen.
Wow.
They go from camp 2 to camp 4, dump all that oxygen, make a tent, come back down on the same day by afternoon.
It's insane.
Even if one top climber in the world can do that, I will give you my next paycheck. I have that much confidence that no top climber in the world can even pull that off. None of the top climbers simply have that capability of lifting that kind of load, performing under that kind of stress, getting to the top, making food for someone, pitching a tent, and then coming back down. Not a single climber in the world can do this. And it's shocking that the Sherpas are not getting their due. Um I truly believe that they I think they are Superman. I think they're superhumans.
They
I
are.
think I think they are from Mars. If you ask me, I think they are genetically just simply superior than us. I think they are a different species altogether in that sense. And some of like even my Sherpa Mingma Tenzi, who is my brother, who is my father, who is my mother, who is my friend, who's my everything when I'm on the mountain. He's my home away from home. And I have seen that guy walk on the mountain. I don't know of any other climber in this world, any Western, any European, any Indian climber who can bloody even compete with this guy. He's just he is at 8300 meters. He does not have oxygen on his body. He not only pitches one tent, but he pitches five tents, and he has 50 kilos on his back. I don't see any human being on this world who can do this apart from Sherpas. I just don't know who can do stuff like this. And I have repeatedly seen Sherpas from so many teams do this kind of stuff all the time as if it's for a routine for them. Like when I'm with Mingma is at home at 8300 meters, and I'm dying.
Yeah.
That's the kind of difference between me and Mingma, or a typical climber and a Sherpa. They are at home and we are just miserable.
Has someone done any scientific study? I mean, have they done research into? Is it because maybe they've been in this region for so long and they're used to the altitude and their body has adapted, or do they have some genetic thing that has mutated over time? Like, I'm curious if someone, if scientists, researchers have just gone there and just studied their bodies, put them through some tests to see like why are they so special at the specific thing?
I think there's been one study, if I'm not wrong. I think they have done study where they have differentiated between the high altitude Sherpas and then and the high altitude porters in the Andes. And the study was essentially how oxygen carrying capacity is completely work the mechanism is completely different for the Sherpas and is completely different for Andes people. So it's almost like how evolution for both of those people has happened in a completely different way. I think it's something like Sherpa people have just a bigger lung and a better oxygen carrying capacity, and something in Andes people living there have just better blood saturation or something. Just completely different ways of making it work. So of course, genetically they are different than us. But I don't think like a serious study has happened on like on a wider scale.
Yeah.
Imagine like bringing in like thousands of Sherpas climbing Everest, and then doing year long studies and figuring out what actually gives them that superior performance, and then trying to sort of figure that out, and even possibly something that we can try doing. I don't know, to get maybe some level of that performance, not maybe like them,
I
but
mean,
maybe to like learn from them and try and make some pharmaceutical medicines that can help cure some diseases at sea level. I don't know, something.
you never know. And whenever you do research, stuff comes up and you don't know what that could help, or sometimes it's inadvertent. It's not the conclusion you were looking for, but something else comes up. So, I mean, it's just a fascinating research to do. So these guys they're the top of the food chain when it comes to climbing. So I'm surprised,
They
no
are.
research has been done. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I hope that I mean a lot of research happens. Like last year, I was on the mountain, and I know that there was this team that was doing research about altitude sickness. Uh, but they were all doing it on us,
Yeah.
and rightly so, because Sherpas don't get altitude sick. So I mean, they do get altitude sick. Don't want to trivialize altitude sickness, but they get very altitude sick compared to us. But I would really, it would be amazing to see a study done on Sherpas and see why they're so superior, even if they are not physically as fit as we are.
Yeah. So Kuntal, taking into account COVID right now, but just I guess if you had to take a high level view of just broad future plans, what does it look like for you? Do you want to Are there specific mountains you want to climb? Do you want to climb all 14 mountains that are over 8,000 meters? Do you want to climb different continents? What are the plans?
So at the moment, I mean, 10 years of just back to back to back to back climbing, and or either working or either just caretaking my father.
Hmm.
I just never got time to step back and look at my fitness, look at my nutrition. And sometimes you're also in this mindset that if something is working, why tinker with it? But with this long break and long break from training and from away from the mountains, I sort of took a step back and said that, hey, I would like to do something in future once the situation is a lot better, and that is 7 summits, which is climbing the 7 tallest mountains on the 7 continents.
Yeah.
I've already done 3 continents. My next continent is Northern America, so I'll be climbing Denali in May of 2021 if things are in good shape by then. Uh, and what I decided to do right now is that I have actually completely redone my nutrition. So I'm completely taking a different direction in terms of my nutrition. And I'm taking a completely different direction in terms of my training. And hopefully, maybe later in this year, December or January, things will be slightly better in Bombay that I can maybe venture out into the mountains, in the local mountains, the ones that are 1 2 hour away from my home, and test out what I'm doing in terms of my training and in terms of my nutrition. And hopefully it will validate the direction I'm taking, and then go climb Denali with that fitness and nutrition, and the new, and what I like to call Kuntal 2.0 that I am trying to work on.
Hmm.
Uh, so I hope that experiment works out. My true dream would have been to climb the 14 8,000ers. The only problem is that 5 of them are in Pakistan,
Oh, okay.
and India and Pakistan, as you know, are some of the
Yeah.
best friends in the world.
Yeah.
So I somehow don't see how we are going to become friends in this lifetime. And that's a never say never.
Yeah.
If magically India and Pakistan become friends, and Pakistan opens up for climbing for Indians, then I would love to go and climb 14 8,000ers. That would be like the biggest dream of my life
So
if I can pull that off.
are Indians not allowed in Pakistan to climb it? They're not. But is that like the law? Or is it just is it just dangerous?
All the 5 mountains are in disputed territory. India claims that territory to be its own.
Okay.
If India allows a climber from India, Pakistan would definitely issue me permit. If I write to Pakistan right now saying, "Hey, I'm a climber from India, I want to climb K2," they would say, "Come, we'll issue your permit." If India allows me to go and climb that mountain, India is officially acceding that land to Pakistan, which will never happen. India will never officially say that that land is Pakistan. For all practical purposes, there's a Pakistan government there, there's Pakistan administration there, and it's Pakistan. It's just that it's disputed territory, which is why we will never be able to climb K2 or G1, G2 or Broad Peak. Uh, I think Nanga Parbat is possibly outside of disputed territory, but the Nanga Parbat is in really, really difficult zone. And and imagine an Indian climber in Pakistan. It would make for maybe a kidnapping attempt, or like a big leverage.
Yeah.
So, do I want to risk that? I'm already risking climbing a mountain, and then do I want to risk this additional thing? Um,
No.
no,
No.
not really. No.
You don't want that. Yeah. It sucks that politics is always gets in the way of some of these things. It's we've put these arbitrary lines on different places, and from this mountain or from that river it's this people in that country, and they
Yep.
don't like the other people in the other country, but the land itself, it doesn't care. It's just arbitrary lines that we humans have put up, so it's unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. I wish I could live in a borderless world, and where people are not bothered about this nonsense,
Yeah.
shitty topics
Yeah.
that just divide us more than anything.
I wish we could all just be nice to each other. That would be great.
Yes.
It's simple. Just be nice to everyone. It's just be a nice, good person and let everyone do what they want as long as they don't hurt anybody. and and we could get along. Let the animals roam. Let just be good. Just be nice.
Yep,
Simple.
yep, yep.
All right, man. Well, Kuntal, I want to thank you so much. I had a blast. I love talking mountains and nature and veganism. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm super active on Instagram, so people can follow me on Instagram. It's Kuntal J, Kuntalj. Uh, and if they search for Kuntal Joisher, there's just one in the world, so they'll only find me. And same with Facebook, Kuntal Joisher. So if they just search for me, very active on Instagram and Facebook. I think that would be the best way to connect with me.
Awesome. And I'll put the links in the show notes so it makes it a little bit easier for people to find you. And yeah, man, thanks again for coming on the podcast. I had a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.